They thought she was a threat, just a teenage girl, walking home with groceries. But in a matter of seconds, everything changed. Gunshots rang out, a child fell, and the world would never be the same again. Because the officers didn't know, her father was no ordinary man. He was a highly trained Delta Force commander. And when they took his daughter, they woke up a storm they couldn't control. Before we dive into this powerful story, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Drop it in the comments below, and if stories like this move you, like this video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more gripping tales. Rain poured in thick sheets over South Grove, the kind of storm that washed away tracks and muffled screams. It was supposed to be a quiet night. At least that's what Officer Mendez muttered as he sipped lukewarm coffee in the patrol cruiser. His partner, Officer Klein, tapped impatient fingers on the dashboard, watching traffic cameras flicker across the in-car monitor. Then the dispatch crackled. Units in Zone 4, reports of suspicious activity near Larkview Apartments, possible armed suspect in the area. Proceed with caution. Mendez tossed his coffee out the window and nodded. That's 2 blocks away. Let's check it out. 3 minutes later, tires screeched onto the corner of Larkview and Monroe. The neighborhood was quiet, only the faint sound of music drifting from an open window. Street lamps flickered, and shadows loomed under porches. No sign of anyone suspicious. That's when they saw her. A young black girl, barely 15, stood at the corner, hoodie soaked through, holding a bag of groceries. Her name was Amara Blake. She had run to the corner store to grab milk and cereal for her little brother. Her mother was out of town. Her father, well, no one ever saw him around. "Hey!" Officer Klein barked, exiting the car with his hand hovering near his weapon. "Show us your hands." Amara froze, confused. I'm just going home, that's my building. Did I stutter?" Klein shouted, advancing with his gun now drawn. Mendez followed suit, nervous but silent. Amara slowly lifted her hands, grocery bag dangling from her fingers. "I don't have anything, I swear." Klein's voice went sharp. "Is that a weapon in your pocket?" "No, sir, it's my phone," she stammered, eyes wide with fear. She reached ever so slightly to show him. A single movement, a thunderous shot. Amara collapsed to the sidewalk. The milk carton rolled into the gutter, spilling white onto red. Klein stood motionless, gun trembling in his hand. "She reached. She's just a kid," Mendez hissed, running over to her. "We need backup now." Blood pooled beneath Amara as her fingers twitched, eyes staring up into the stormy sky. Her lips moved as though trying to say something. Then her breathing slowed. Across the street, a man emerged from the shadows. Drenched, silent, eyes locked on the scene. Major Daniel Blake. He didn't blink, didn't flinch, just watched. Mendez turned around and noticed the man. "Sir, back away. This is a crime scene." Daniel didn't move. He stepped closer. His combat boots splashed into the puddle of blood. Klein raised his weapon again. "I said back off." Daniel's voice was like steel wrapped in calm thunder. "That's my daughter." Klein paused, lowering his gun slightly. "What?" Daniel dropped to his knees beside Amara, cradling her head in his arms. "Amara, I'm here." She blinked weakly, a single tear slipping from the corner of her eye. Then her body went limp. Mendez looked sick. Klein began backing up, realizing what they'd just done. Daniel didn't scream, didn't cry, just stared at both of them, his eyes empty but burning. From inside his leather coat he pulled out a badge. "Retired Major, 3rd Battalion, Delta Force. Authorization, TS-SCI. ID 02498, Delta." Klein gulped. "Wait, Delta Force." Daniel stood. "You two made a mistake tonight." Sirens wailed in the distance as backup arrived. Blue and red lights painted the street. A sergeant rushed out, barking orders, but Daniel had already vanished into the dark alley behind the apartment. No one saw where he went. No one dared to follow. The next morning, the headlines exploded. Teen girl shot by police in mistaken identity tragedy. Father of victim identified as decorated Delta Force veteran. The mayor called for an internal investigation. The police chief scrambled to hold a press conference. Klein and Mendez were suspended pending review, locked inside their homes under threat of protesters. But behind the scenes, a file was being accessed in a cold government basement. A man named Commander Shaw read the incident report and immediately picked up a secure satellite phone. "We have a problem," he said. "He's awake." 3 days later, a black van pulled up outside the South Grove Police Department. Security cameras blinked and fizzled out. The entire block lost power for 4 minutes. When the lights returned, the van was gone, and so was Officer Klein. Mendez began to panic. He locked his doors, double-checked his windows, switched hotels 3 times. Too late. A voice greeted him at the back exit of a motel in Winston County. "Detective Mendez, we need to talk." Daniel stood there, no emotion in his face. He wore tactical gear under a gray hoodie, his eyes colder than the night around them. "I didn't mean to," Mendez stuttered, backing up. "It wasn't me. I just followed orders." "You pulled your weapon on a child," Daniel said, stepping closer. "You watched her bleed. You let him shoot." "I tried to help. Please." Daniel didn't speak. Instead, he handed Mendez a sealed envelope. Inside are the names of every officer who's covered up unlawful shootings in the last 5 years of your precinct. You're going to leak it anonymously. Tonight. Mendez stared. "Why me?" Daniel leaned in. "Because you still have a soul, and because you get one chance before I come back." Then he was gone. Meanwhile, across the city, Commander Shaw sat in a room with 3 high-ranking federal agents and the Secretary of Homeland Security. "He's acting outside protocol," one man said. "He's not acting," Shaw corrected. "He's retaliating." A woman leaned forward. "Can we contain him?" Shaw looked grim. "You don't contain Daniel Blake. You pray you're not on his list." The room fell silent. Someone whispered, "God help us." The city of South Grove was on edge. News of Amara Blake's shooting had spread like wildfire. Candlelight vigils lit up every corner. Her school left her desk untouched. Flowers and handwritten notes piling by the hour. But no one had seen her father. What the public didn't know, what even the media hadn't dug up, was that Daniel Blake wasn't just a retired war hero. He was a shadow in classified operations across 7 continents. His name had never made headlines because it was never meant to. Until now. Klein's body was found 5 miles from the city, floating face down in a quarry. No gunshot wound, no broken bones, just a single mark on his neck, precise, surgical, and lethal. The medical examiner was baffled. "It's like someone hit his vagus nerve directly. Instant shutdown." Commander Shaw wasn't surprised. Inside were grainy satellite images, dossiers, and mission records, stamped top secret in red. One image showed Daniel in Iraq, standing next to a burning Humvee, cradling a rescued child. Another showed him parachuting into hostile territory without backup. He was the guy they sent when negotiations failed and diplomacy was a joke. And now, that man had declared war on home soil. At Precinct 9, Officer Mendez sat in the dark break room, pale and sweating. His hand trembled as he reread the file Daniel had given him. Names, dates, falsified reports, suppressed footage. It was all there. Corruption deep in the department. And he had signed off on some of it without even realizing. A knock came at the door. He jumped. Detective Holland stepped in, chewing gum like he owned the place. "You okay, bro? You look like you saw a ghost." Mendez nodded. "Yeah, just not sleeping well." Holland sat, eyes narrowing. "Word is, Klein's dead. They're saying suicide, but nobody buys that." Mendez didn't respond. "You think it was him?" Holland asked. "The girl's dad." Mendez swallowed hard. "I know it was." Holland leaned closer. "Then we've got a bigger problem. Because if Daniel Blake's really in the wind, then we're all targets. Everyone who signed off on that operation. Every dirty cop who laughed it off." Mendez stood. "Then maybe it's time we stop laughing." Across town, Daniel watched. He had eyes everywhere now. Former contacts, tech analysts, hackers who owed him favors. One lived in a camper parked behind a bowling alley. His name was Lucian, a wiry ex-NSA coder who now survived off Monster energy drinks and regret. Lucian tapped away at a laptop, pulling precinct logs and private messages. "You were right, man," he muttered. "Klein's partner, Mendez, is spooked. And this guy Holland, he's covering something big. Been deleting old body cam footage all morning." Daniel nodded, arms crossed. Lucian continued. "Also, the FBI's setting up a task force. Guess who's leading it? Shaw." Daniel didn't flinch. "Figures. He's still chasing ghosts. You want me to leak this corruption file to the press?" "Not yet," Daniel said. "The public needs more than proof. They need a reason to care, a face, a story." He looked out the camper window, rain streaking down like tears. They need to see what happens when justice is ignored. Meanwhile, at a government safehouse outside D.C., Commander Shaw paced. "We trained him to think 12 steps ahead," he said to Agent Walker, a young strategist from Homeland. Walker was skeptical. "Come on, sir. He's a grieving father, not a terrorist." Shaw slammed his fist on the table. "That's where you're wrong. Daniel Blake isn't reacting emotionally. He's executing a strategy." He pointed to a digital map. Red dots blinked around South Grove. "These are all the officers and officials tied to misconduct cases involving minority civilians in the last 5 years. Notice how one already turned up dead." Walker frowned. You think he's building a pattern? No, he already did. That night, Detective Holland left the station, tossing his badge into his glove box and lighting a cigarette. He drove toward the old train yard, his usual spot for meeting off-the-books contacts. He didn't notice the motorcycle tailing him. At 11:42 p.m., he stepped out of his car, waiting. The wind howled between the rusted train cars. Then a flashbang rolled across the gravel. Boom! Blinded, Holland stumbled back, reaching for his gun. But before he could unholster it, a gloved hand wrapped around his wrist. In a single move, he was disarmed, twisted and slammed face first onto the hood of his own car. "What, wait," he screamed. "You don't know who I am." A low voice whispered behind his ear. "I know exactly who you are." Daniel twisted the wrist slightly. Holland cried out. "I have footage," Daniel said. "Bodycam footage you buried. A teenager beaten in 2019. And Amari wasn't your first cover-up either, was she?" "I had no choice," Holland stammered. Daniel pressed harder. "Neither do I." Elsewhere, Mendez sat alone in his apartment, the city screaming outside his window. He stared at his laptop. The file Daniel had handed him was open. His fingers hovered over the mouse. "Just leak it," he whispered to himself. "Just press send." But fear kept him frozen, until his phone buzzed. A video. He opened it. Holland tied to a chair, bruised and bleeding. The timestamp, 15 minutes ago. A message followed. Tick-tock. Mendez's hands shook as he clicked send. Within minutes, the files went live. Reddit, Twitter, anonymous boards. A website with nothing but the title, justiceforamari.org. South Grove exploded in outrage. Inside a private suite downtown, Police Commissioner Walters stared at her phone in horror. This is a war," her aide whispered. "Who do we call?" Walters' hands trembled. "I don't know if there's anyone left to call." Because Daniel Blake was no longer seeking justice. He was out for retribution, and he wasn't done yet. Commissioner Walters paced across her office floor like a caged lion. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing. Politicians, lawyers, news outlets, even an emergency call from the governor's secretary. But none of them mattered. Not tonight. The city was bleeding. One officer dead, one missing, one leak, and now the whole country was watching. On every screen, the words glowed. Justice for Amari, Delta Dad, South Grove cover-up. Even children were asking their parents, "Who is Daniel Blake?" Downtown, the protests grew louder. A wall of citizens surrounded the South Grove Police Department, holding signs, chanting Amari's name. Some climbed fences, others banged pots and pans. The tension was thicker than smoke in a burning house. Inside, Mendez stood frozen behind bulletproof glass. He wasn't proud of what he'd done. He was terrified. Every second that passed, he wondered if Daniel Blake would return. And this time, it wouldn't be with a flash drive or a warning. It would be with vengeance. And Mendez knew he deserved it. In a bunker-like command center 4 blocks away, federal agents reviewed the chaos on digital monitors. "Sir," a young agent called to Commander Shaw, "we just got facial recognition ping from the CityLink traffic cameras, 2 blocks from the courthouse. He's moving west on foot." Shaw stood up immediately. "Deploy units now. Lock down the grid. Air patrols only. I don't want a single civilian caught in the crossfire." "Sir, with all due respect," Agent Walker interrupted. "If he wanted to disappear, he could have done it. The man is inviting us to chase him." Shaw's jaw tightened. "He wants us to follow him, because he has something to show us." 2 miles away, Daniel stood beneath a bridge drenched in graffiti, facing a man tied to a rusted chair. His name was Deputy Chief Carter, a 30-year veteran with a spotless public record and a very dirty private one. "You oversaw the burial of 10 misconduct cases," Daniel said, voice low. "You signed off on reports that erased truth, destroyed lives." Carter coughed, blood dripping from his mouth. "I was doing my job." "No, you were selling silence." Daniel removed a small recording device and clicked play. It was Carter's voice. "If they find out we doctored Amari's file, we're done. Keep the footage buried and say she reached." Carter's eyes widened. Where did you get that?" Daniel leaned in, eyes like stone. "From a man with a conscience. Something you clearly misplaced." Carter's phone buzzed in Daniel's hand. It was a group chat. Daniel scanned the message, smirked slightly, then hit send. Across South Grove, hundreds of people received a new video. The body cam footage. Amari, standing still, milk in one hand, phone in the other. She had begged them to listen. Then came the shot. There was no weapon, no aggression. Just a child, terrified, trying to live. The city snapped. Thousands poured into the streets. Not just South Grove, but DC, Chicago, Atlanta. One truth had united them, a truth the system tried to bury. Back in the bridge tunnel, Carter screamed as Daniel vanished once more into the shadows, leaving him bound with a note taped to his chest. "Turn yourself in, or next time I don't leave you breathing." Minutes later, a news crew found him, the note going viral within seconds. By morning, Homeland Security had surrounded all major buildings in South Grove. Checkpoints were everywhere. But Daniel still moved like smoke through the cracks. He hacked traffic cameras, changed license plates, even wore an old garbage collector uniform to stroll past a police perimeter. No one noticed him, because Daniel didn't need force to win. He needed the truth. Commissioner Walters sat across from Commander Shaw in a war room that felt less like government and more like defeat. "We have over 40% of our officers calling in sick," she said. "Morale is gone. Our budget is about to collapse from lawsuits, and the governor wants me to give a press statement." Shaw was quiet for a moment, then said, "You know what you have to do." She narrowed her eyes. "Resign." "No, help us catch him." Walters shook her head. "Catch him? You trained him, remember? If Daniel Blake wanted me dead, I wouldn't be sitting here right now." Shaw sighed. "Then what do you suggest?" "We listen to him. Give him a platform. He doesn't want violence. He wants accountability." Shaw didn't look convinced. "You don't negotiate with a ghost." Walters whispered, "Maybe we should have listened before he became one." Across town, a quiet apartment buzzed with equipment. Maps on the walls, police rosters on the table, military-grade tools tucked under the bed. Daniel sat beside a small makeshift shrine. It held Amari's photo, her school ID, a medal she once won for a spelling bee. He stared at it for a long time, his hand clenched. Then he stood, picked up his radio. "Lucian, activate the broadcast signal." Lucian's voice came through the earpiece. "You sure, man? Once it's live, there's no going back." "I was sure the moment they shot her." 30 minutes later, a sudden feed took over every major television channel and social media app. It was live. Daniel's face filled the screen. Calm, measured, unreadable. "My name is Daniel Blake. I served this country in silence for 20 years. I carried the flag into places no map would mark. I rescued children in war zones while my own child was murdered on a sidewalk." He paused. "They lied about her. They lied to you. They're still lying. Let me be clear. I do not want blood, but I will expose every lie, every file, every officer who trades justice for protection. The time for hiding is over." He looked directly into the camera. "You started this, but I'm going to finish it." The screen cut to black. The streets trembled with energy. Every lawmaker, every journalist, every city mayor across America scrambled to respond, because Daniel Blake had just declared digital war, and he hadn't even fired his first shot yet. The city didn't sleep after Daniel's broadcast. From coast to coast, his face was everywhere, trending on social media, looped on TV, whispered about in barbershops and boardrooms. Some called him a terrorist, others a hero, but all agreed on one thing: he was not done. At FBI headquarters in D.C., chaos reigned. "Mr. Director," a tech analyst called out, waving frantically, "we have over 13 million downloads of the classified files Daniel leaked through back channels. That's historic." Commander Shaw entered the Situation Room, ignoring the babble. He walked straight to a locked case and opened it, revealing a gray folder marked Project Whisper. The analyst stiffened. "Sir, are we really doing this?" Shaw looked tired. "He gave us a war. We respond like warriors." Meanwhile, in a quiet house on the city's edge, Daniel held a tactical map up to the light. He stood with his longtime ally Lucian and another man, Zaire, a former recon sniper Daniel once saved in Liberia. "I need eyes inside the precinct," Daniel said. "We get to the internal servers, we expose everything, not just South Grove, every city they've covered up injustice in." Lucian nodded. "We can use drone backup and mobile uplinks, but we'll only get a 2-minute window before the firewalls fry our feed." Zaire checked his sniper scope. 2 minutes is enough if you know where to hit." Daniel traced his finger over the map. "Then it's settled. We go in tonight." Across town, Commissioner Walters prepared for a press conference. Her face looked pale under the lights. She held the podium with both hands as reporters swarmed. "I stand before you not just as commissioner. What happened to Amari Blake was a failure of everything our badge is meant to protect. And I will not protect that failure any longer." Gasps echoed. "I am officially resigning effective immediately. But before I step down, I am releasing the sealed body cam footage from every suppressed investigation in South Grove PD over the last 15 years. Cameras flashed. The crowd roared. Chaos erupted behind her. But she had already walked off the stage. She was out. But Daniel was just getting in. By nightfall, the mission was live.
Lucian manned the control van parked in an alley. Zaire climbed a rooftop 4 blocks from the police department. And Daniel? He walked straight through the front entrance of the precinct, wearing an officer's uniform he'd acquired earlier that day. No one stopped him. Security was overwhelmed with internal chaos and protest threats. New officers, confused deputies, system shutdowns. He passed 3 guards, 2 lieutenants, 1 captain, and then he reached the server room. He slid his ID badge. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. A guard walked up. You knew? Daniel didn't blink. Transferred from Precinct 22. Power relay check. It'll take 2 minutes. The guard nodded, too tired to question. Daniel entered and locked the door. Lucian, I'm in. Copy, Lucian said. Sending uplink in 3, 2. The server glowed to life. Daniel uploaded a small drive. Every hidden file. Every buried complaint. Every forged document. He didn't say a word as the screen flickered with the truth. Victim names, officers, badges, years of silence, now screaming in digital ink. Lucian shouted over the comms. We're live across 10 mirror sites. Downloads climbing fast. Wait. A sudden beep. Daniel, we're getting traced. They've activated Project Whisper. Daniel's face tightened. What's Project Whisper? Lucian's voice dropped. Military kill drones. Biometric targeting. They've launched one in your direction. ETA. 60 seconds. Daniel yanked the drive, disabled the system, and blew the door hinges off with a compact charge. He sprinted through the corridor as alarms blared. Officers scrambled, but most of them had no clue what was happening. Overhead, a distant whirring echoed, the drone approaching. Zaire's voice cut in through the radio. Daniel, duck right now. Daniel rolled into an evidence room as the wall beside him exploded, shrapnel shredding metal and paper. The drone hovered, scanning for movement. Zaire's scope locked in. 1 shot, he whispered. He fired. The drone's left rotor burst in sparks, sending it spiraling into the parking lot in a flaming spiral. Boom. The precinct shook. Daniel emerged, covered in dust, coughing. Status, he choked. Lucian screamed through static. We got everything. It's out. It's all out. In less than an hour, dozens of news networks confirmed the breach. Leaked body cam footage revealed racial profiling, unlawful shootings, planted evidence, decades of rot. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. Twitter crashed from traffic. By morning, 7 officers across 4 states had already been arrested. 3 more departments launched emergency reviews. Congress scheduled a hearing. Daniel's file, the one they tried to bury, was now everyone's morning headline. But it wasn't over. Not for Daniel. Not until the ones who pulled the trigger were held accountable. Mendez. He had confessed. He had leaked the file. He had obeyed the warning. But he had still stood there while Amara bled. And Daniel wasn't sure forgiveness was in him anymore. In a motel outside the city, Mendez stared at his phone. He watched the footage again. The broadcast, the leak, the press conference, and then the footage paused. A new video file had appeared in his inbox. No sender, no subject. He opened it. It was a video of his own patrol car, parked in the alley behind the motel. Live feed. A shadow moved past the windshield. Mendez's blood froze. He turned around slowly toward the window. A gloved hand slid an envelope under the door. He hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single sentence. You still have one more chance to make it right. The city was on fire with change. But Daniel's war wasn't over yet. Because the final piece, the deepest cut, the command behind the trigger, had not yet been revealed. And Daniel Blake was coming for them next.
The city had changed. Overnight, statues of silence were pulled down, and buildings once protected by shadows now stood naked under the blazing sun of truth. But the man responsible for the reckoning, Daniel Blake, was still moving, still hunting. He wasn't after headlines. Not anymore. He wanted the one who gave the order. In a high-rise federal office in Washington, D.C., Deputy Director Calvin Roark tapped his fingers against a mahogany desk. He wore the kind of suit stitched in places normal men never even noticed. He was the quiet kind of powerful. The kind you didn't see until it was far too late. A knock at his door. It opened before he answered. Commander Shaw entered, looking like he hadn't slept in days. Blake just took out another target, Chief Howard in New Orleans. Left behind a folder labeled "Truth is not terrorism." Roark sighed. He's becoming a myth. Shaw hesitated. Sir, it's time to come clean. You authorized Larkview's operation. You ordered Klein and Mendez to be proactive on that corner. Roark didn't blink. You can't let civilians think every cop is a villain. Sometimes you need to show force. That girl was in the wrong place at the wrong time. She was holding cereal and a phone, Shaw snapped. She didn't get in the way, you made her a target. Rourke stood slowly, eyes cold. You don't get to lecture me. You trained Blake. You turned him into what he is. Now clean up your creation, before he burns the whole institution down. That same night, Lucian sat in a beat-up SUV 2 blocks from Rourke's private security estate. His fingers flew across his laptop as infrared cameras pinged across rooftops. Perimeter's tight, man, he said into the mic. 3 guards at the west wall, 1 inside the tower. Snipers too. Rourke brought out the whole army. Daniel's voice came through steady and calm. Then we enter like shadows. Zaire was already on the roof, watching. Lucian grinned. I do love when you go ghost mode. The infiltration was silent. Surgical, perfect. Zaire took out the rooftop sniper's non-lethal tranquilizer. Daniel scaled the back wall using nothing but rope, gloves and gravity-defying control. Within minutes, they were inside. Daniel moved like a whisper through the hall. Every turn of the corner, calculated. Every breath, controlled. By the time the interior guards realized they had company, Daniel was already standing outside Rourke's office door. He didn't knock. He blew the hinges clean off with a breech charge and stepped into the smoke. Rourke coughed, stumbling back. Who the hell do you think you are? Daniel didn't raise his voice. He simply said, Amari's father. Rourke backed into a drawer, reaching for a pistol. Too slow. Daniel fired a dart from his suppressed sidearm, piercing Rourke's wrist. He screamed, dropping the gun. You taught your men to shoot before thinking, Daniel said, advancing. You told them she was a threat, but the real threat was the truth. She was in a high-crime zone. Rourke spat. We don't get to wait. You do get to think, Daniel snapped. You get to value life. You get to see that a black child holding milk and cereal isn't a war zone. Rourke's breathing grew erratic. So what now? You kill me, is that justice? Daniel pulled out a flash drive and tossed it on the desk. No, justice is everyone watching as your world crumbles. Lucian's voice buzzed in Daniel's earpiece. We're live in 3, 2, 1. Cameras hidden in the office ceiling, activated. Rourke's face lit up on screens across the country. Daniel stepped back. Tell them what you did, or I will. Rourke laughed bitterly. You won't kill me. That makes you just another criminal. Daniel's jaw tightened. You're wrong. But he didn't shoot. Instead, he walked to the window and signaled. Within seconds, Homeland officers surrounded the building. Zaire and Lucian had already vanished into the night. Daniel turned to Rourke one last time. Your reputation dies tonight. And tomorrow your name disappears like the others you erased. He placed a photo of Amara on the desk. She was 15. You never even said her name. Then he walked out, hands raised. The arrest made history. Deputy Director Rourke was indicted on federal conspiracy charges. A wave of resignations followed. Body cam regulations were rewritten. Mendez testified publicly, then entered witness protection. Commissioner Walters was offered a federal post and turned it down. She opened a youth center in South Grove instead. Zaire returned to private life. Lucian vanished again into his digital world. And Daniel? He refused interviews. Refused the $1 million offers to tell his story. Instead, he visited Amari's grave every Sunday. One morning, a young black girl approached the grave beside him. Were you her dad? She asked quietly. Daniel nodded. She helped me once, the girl let me borrow her pen. Said I had pretty handwriting. Daniel smiled faintly. The girl looked down. I want to be a lawyer now. Like someone who stops bad cops. Daniel reached into his coat and handed her Amari's old spelling bee medal. For justice, he said. The girl took it with trembling hands. Then he stood and walked away, the wind whispering gently through the trees. Because sometimes justice doesn't roar, it whispers, and watches, and never forgets.